Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's class on sketching flowers in a vase. I'm your instructor, Adrienne Hodge, and so nice to see so many familiar faces and a lot of new faces joining us tonight. We had a huge number of folks signed up for this class. I know flowers are a very popular drawing subject, so plan to have a lot more flower drawing classes going forward for you all. And last week we had a class on flower fundamentals drawing hydrangeas, which wasn't like an official part one to this class, but it was very helpful leading up to tonight's class. So if you missed that one, make sure you check that out after watching tonight's class, and that can fill in any holes you may have when it comes to the specific flowers that are in this vase, the hydrangeas, because we are drawing hydrangeas in this vase. But I also wanted that tonight's class to be transferable to any flowers in a vase. So there's going to be a lot of focus in our reference photo tonight on the vase itself and the interaction between the transitional moments between the flowers and the vase and the leaves. And we're going to leave the flowers themselves rather undeveloped. And I try not to use the word unfinished because finished is a relative term, but we're going to leave them sort of implied and undeveloped in a lot of ways. But if you wanted to complete the drawing of the hydrangeas, then last week's class would be very helpful to do that so that you could fully develop this drawing tonight, or you can, use the skills from tonight's class to draw any flowers in a vase. And then throughout the chat, throughout the night in the chat, I thought it would be fun to continue taking a poll on which flowers you would like me to focus on next in this series that I keep coming back to on flower fundamentals like last week. So, so far I've done a few classes which I've titled Flower Fundamentals, and we've done roses, we've done datura flowers, and we've done orchids. And then last week we did hydrangeas. So, and that's where I'm like really breaking down the specific, like a diagram of that flower and just really breaking it up into parts, zooming in on it, zooming back, like looking at it from different angles, etc., on just that specific flower. And we're mostly talking about the blooms. So tonight is, an opportunity to really focus on the leaves and other, aspects of flowers that would be in a vase. But yeah, I'm seeing some great answers so far, like peonies. I love peonies. That's one that's on my list for sure. So we'll check back in at the end of the class in the chat, and I'll putting Chanel, our moderator, to work a little more with these flower fundamental classes to like take note of what flowers are being voted the most in the chat. So feel free to go ahead and say it again, even if it's already been said, because if it's coming up a lot, then I know that's why I did hydrangeas, was because so many people voted hydrangeas in the last flower fundamental class that we did. Okay, so I'm going to switch to my tabletop view and go over supplies. But actually, before I do that, I was like, why do I have this other sketchbook right here? And I remembered, oh, right, I just put it on the floor while I was talking. And then I realized I had it out for a reason, and that was to give you a preview of the class that's coming up next week, which is a free class. And it's on composition tips and tricks of abstract forms. Composition tips and tricks, Intro to Abstract Forms is the name of the class. And that is already up on the Michael's website. Where you signed up for this class, you can find the registration link for that one. And so what we'll be doing in next week's class is taking the rules of thirds in a rectangle, talking about the golden ratio and, the frame of a rectangle, and the rule of thirds in breaking up that frame into an interesting composition in regards to abstract compositions. And we'll be using Tombow markers, but you can use any markers for that class, and we'll be talking about different shapes and forms that we might use. And I'm using my own abstract work as inspiration for these, but we'll be encouraging you to, you know, come up with your own ideas and hopefully giving you some good springboard for creating your own abstract compositions. And then that will be leading into the following week's class, which I don't have the example right in front of me, but it's in premium class on abstract painting using the Sennelier squeeze pouches. So we'll be using some really thick, high textured, because it's going to be very textured because it's nice thick paint that we'll be using with those squeeze pouches and doing some abstract art with those. So that's the week after next, and that's a premium class. And then I won't keep talking about what's coming up after that, but that's just what's coming up the next couple weeks. Okay, now I will switch to my tabletop view and go over supplies. Okay, so I am using the Faber-Castell 6 pack set, which is empty because all pencils are right here. I don't know why I opened it, but it's got an HB, a B, a 2B, 4B, 6B, and 8B in it, and we'll be using almost all of those in that little set tonight as we sketch. I've got a Faber-Castell dust-free synthetic eraser here, and then I've got the Canson Drawing Pad, which is upside down and backwards because I'm left-handed and I want those spirals to be on the right side. You can use any sketchbook, any graphite pencils that you have handy, and you know, any synthetic eraser that you have. All of these were purchased at Michael's. Don't forget to tag your work with those hashtags, Make It With Michael's or Michael's Classes or both, and follow me on Instagram at Adrienne Hodge Art. And Chanel actually has my link tree as well, so you can find me on Facebook or anywhere through that link tree. You can also even sign up for a free 15-minute consultation with me to talk about goals if you were interested in private lessons, but you weren't sure about booking them just yet. Or you can go ahead and sign up for a spot on my calendar for private lessons because I have a lot of daytime availability on certain days of the week right now. And then here's some of my artwork and my business cards. Also on Facebook, Adrienne Hodge Fine Art, and Instagram, I already told you. Okay, so let's dive in to drawing flowers in a vase. I'm going to get the reference photo up. So the reference photo should have been included in the supply list for tonight's class. It's the same reference photos that were included in last week's class. So we've got the this photo of hydrangeas in a glass vase, and then the other photos were these two. So zoomed in a little more on those hydrangeas, and we used those same photos last week, and we looked at these a little bit as well. Always just want to manage expectations in a class like this because we do just have 1 hour and we've got a lot of folks in the Zoom. So there could be, you know, interruptions and questions that could take up some time during the class tonight. So I'm going to get as far as I can with this demo tonight. I may go back to this drawing to fill in some holes if I don't make it quite this far. And then I want you to just, you know, manage your own expectations of yourself because we're all on our own unique journeys in our art practices. And some of us are going to be farther along on that journey than others. And, you know, some of us draw more slowly than others, so results may vary, right? We're going to do our best to get something like this, and our focus is going to be, like I said before, on the vase and this transitional moment between the vase and the we're going to get into a little bit of like the reflective light on this glass jar container here that I was using as a vase. It's actually like a you know, like an old juice pourer or something like for orange juice. But we're going to spend a lot of time on the leaves as well and the background and yeah, the whole thing. Okay, so I'm going to flip to a blank page and I think I will actually tear this out too. So I have it nice and handy. So this was last week's class where we broke down the hydrangeas and the flower fundamentals. Okay, I had a blank page and then I lost it when I did that. There we go. Okay, so yeah, take your time on this. I try to keep it at an hour whenever I'm developing the sketches for this class. And I recall I started drawing this while sitting on the couch next to my daughter a couple months ago when I was planning this. And I think I spent more than an hour on it because I remember looking at the clock and being like, I need to stop because I'm spending way more than an hour now. And I got to make sure that the results are close to what could be completed in an hour. But just feel like putting that disclaimer in there that I probably worked on this for more like an hour and a half. And that was, you know, we're already 10 minutes in right now. So, and I want time to look at your drawings at the end. All right, so we're going to start with this area right here with this transitional moment. And a lot of our focus is really going to be on this middle part right here, where it transitions from the vase to the flowers. I've been teaching adults for many years, drawing and painting classes for primarily adults. I have taught kids a lot as well. And I've noticed a trend when, you know, people love to draw and paint flowers, but whenever they are drawing and painting the flowers, the focus tends to be on the flower itself. And then not a lot of attention gets paid to, you know, what the flower is interacting with in the photograph. And definitely if it's in a vase, that gets ignored quite a bit. And, you know, I'm always kind of pushing people in drawing and painting classes to like get into this area of a photograph. So that was my intent tonight. Okay, so we're going to start with, and I'm using a 2B pencil, but that's really just so that my lines are showing up a little darker on the screen. Out of that set, if you've got the same pencils as me, I would be using just a little bit lighter ones like the HB or the B to get started, and try to keep your pencil parallel to the paper, so on its side, so that the graphite that you're putting on the paper is just sitting on the surface and can be easily erased. The more pressure you put on your pencil, the more you're digging those lines into the paper, and it's going to be harder to erase. All right, so we're starting with an oval here for the opening at the mouth of the vase. We can't see a lot of this oval because it's blocked by the leaves, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to draw the entire oval. But it's not a perfect oval because it's got this little spout at the end. So it's going to be more like a disc like this with this little spout coming off. And I don't know if it's flipping it for me, but the little spout is on the right side in the photograph, but then it's, oh, I guess it goes left in the reflection on my Zoom too. I don't know how it's showing up for you all, but I just realized it was flipped, mirrored for me. Okay, and then we've got a little ridge at the end. So we've got,
Hey, Adrienne.
oh yes.
We have a request if you could put the reference photo in so they could see it as well.
I can try to scooch it over a little bit, but it might be a little tricky just because I want to be zoomed in kind of close. If I zoom out a little bit, I could do that. But I included the reference photo so that you all could, you know, have it handy. So, but that's, I can do that. Okay, I'm just not going to be as close to the drawing. Okay, so now we're going to get this little ridge in there, but we really don't need it wrapped all the way around. We just need it really visible over here on the side, but that's how it would go if it was going all the way there. Okay, and then we're just gonna go ahead and start putting the shapes of the leaves in there really quickly. So we've got the little ridge at the opening at the mouth, and I want you drawing nice and light. Like even right now, I'm pressing down way harder on my pencil than I would if I was sitting on my couch drawing, or like I started drawing it, you know, the first time. All right, and then we're looking for the overall big shapes of these leaves, like the shape that the entire mass of leaves create as a whole. So they're organic, so they don't have to, like I like to say about anything organic in all of my classes, it doesn't have to look like that leaf. It just has to look like a leaf, right? So it's okay if your leaves are not perfectly rendered exactly like you're seeing them in the photograph, but we're just kind of getting the overall silhouette. And I'll go back over all my lines so that those show up for you. And I am getting a little more specific as to the outer shape that I'm seeing on a couple of these. But I don't want you to worry too much about, you know, getting the exact shape of the silhouette of the leaves in there. So like I said, I'm pressing down much harder on my pencil right now than I want you to be doing. It's just the nature of teaching on Zoom. I got to do it or else you won't see my lines. All right, and then over here, we've got a couple of leaves, but we're just looking at the overall silhouette or the shape, outer line shape of them. And I maybe went a little too far with those. Those don't go that far in that direction. We want to leave some space for the like bulbous shape of the hydrangeas. And since the hydrangeas are framing what we're seeing of the leaves, especially over here on this side, since they're overlapping on top of the leaves, we're going to have this little scoopy action right here. And ideally you're sketching that nice and light, nice and loose and light. I'm just not sketching it as loose and light as I'd like to. Again, so that you'll see my lines. In fact, I might just sketch it a little loose and then go back and darken it because I'm needing to move them around a little bit. Okay, so I'm just erasing the part of the mouth opening on the vase where the leaves were overlapping it, so that I'm only seeing that initial aspect of the opening that is visible. Okay, and then inside of the vase, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. We've got this one leaf that does a really fun little thing right here. I'm going to go ahead and start to sketch this one leaf. It kind of reminds me of like a Venus flytrap, the shape that it's making right here. It comes down in front of the opening of the vase and it overlaps itself a little bit. It does a little twist and turn like this. So we're putting that in there, and then we're again erasing the part of the opening, which was visible right there through the leaf, since that leaf is coming in front. It's doing that number. I drew it a little differently on the other example. I'm looking a little more closely this time. Okay, and then I recall I redrew this little spout quite a bit the last time I drew it, and now is going to be no different because I want to get the 3 dimensions of the spout. And go ahead and put that in there, how it does that. Like a little mouse. like the opening, like a dolphin's mouth opening right there. And then it curves a little bit and then it comes down. Okay, so something like that. And if we had time, I would sit here and sketch out the contours of this vase for you. Let me see how we doing on time. We're already at 22 after. I might do it in a second, but for now, I'm just going to keep going. Okay, so we've got, now the base is going to start to become more narrow a little bit here. It starts to curve in just a little bit here on this side. And on this side, it sort of slopes down.
Hey, Adrian. A couple people are saying that they are having trouble seeing it. And I think they're asking if you could draw darker, but I think it was the spotlight that was making it hard to see.
Okay, yeah, I just turned off my spotlight, and also y'all got to just bear with me just a little bit. I will darken my lines. I wish I was such a, infallible human that every line I'm drawing was perfect the first time, but I'm trying to just be a little light with this darker pencil so that I can erase lines as I find the shape. And then I promise I will darken them for you. Okay, but also some of these lines, we don't want them to be too dark because we're drawing a reflective surface. So we want, the idea to get across that some of this is lighter. So if I press down really hard on my pencil so you can see it, then I'm not going to be actually drawing the same way. So just bear with me as we get in here and put these darker values in here. Some of these lighter lines, they're more implied lines. And so, I mean, just look how light the vase is compared to the dark shadows on the leaves. It wouldn't be as nice of a drawing. It wouldn't be as representational if I was pressing down super hard with my pencil. So I'm only going to go as dark as some of these lines are in this drawing. And I promise you'll be able to see what I want you to see. Some of these lines, we want them to be light. We want them to be implied. So if you can't follow along as I'm drawing it, like in the moment, just give me just a minute. I wish I was. I'm sure the AI soon will take over and we'll have robots doing my job. But for now, you got to deal with my human fallibleness. I got to find the shapes just a little bit before I darken them. Also, there's that value scale from 0 to 10. So 0 is talking about the absolute light on the value scale, where the light's hitting it directly, like right here, where the light is hitting it. I mean, without my spotlight, it's like we can't even see in this photograph where the light is hitting the side of the vase directly. So I wouldn't want to draw a dark line right there, right? I'm only going to darken these areas of dark shadows, and I can do that in just a moment, and then it will become more visible to you. Okay, but I'm just finding the shape of the vase. Can do a little sketch off to the side of the contours to help y'all in just a moment, and that could really help. Okay, so it's a cylinder. We're sketching a cylinder. And let me just do a quick little contour sketch if we're having trouble with the shape of the base. Okay, so I'll go really dark with these. Let me grab my 8B pencil for this. Okay, so we're looking at this oval shape, and then we've got this, and then we've got the spout. I'm just going to do a real rough sketch of it here. And then it comes in more narrow, and then it goes out slightly. The base of it is just a little wider than the spout at the top. Okay, so on the vertical axis, we've got these lines describing the verticals. So we've got straight lines in the middle, and then on the sides, they're going to curve out in relationship to the edge of the vase. And then on the horizontals, we've got curves all the way around describing the curve of that cylinder shape. And so the contours are like, you know, the elevational lines of a form. And so up here, we've got a similar situation, except it's kind of curving onto itself. So right here, we've got this, we've got these curves. All of our reflective light is going to follow the curves that we're seeing here. So as we start to put the reflective light in, I don't want you to draw these contour lines. I'm just drawing them so you can understand the form that I'm drawing here. But we're going to be looking at this reflective light in just a moment here. And this is like the lines that are going to be super light. So I want to make sure you can see what I will be doing, but very light. So it's going to not be hard lines, but this is, it will be following the contours. The value is going to follow the light and dark shapes of shadow and light are going to follow these contours. I just want to make sure, since this is all going to be super light as we go, that I've taken the time to do this, since that's where the emphasis is in this drawing as well. Okay, so we're keeping it nice and light here. And the only stuff that we're going to make darker is going to be where these darker shadows are falling. So on this little ridge here, where it, oh, hang on a second, I got a little lost. So we've got this little ridge, kind of talking to myself right now. And then this one. So yeah, it's like about here where the dark. So there's this little ridge here where there's a shadow, which is basically the shadow from the leaves that's showing up. And I'll just go ahead and darken that now so that you can see it. And then underneath that, it's implied. So we're not pushing like a hard outline around the whole thing. We're looking at what the value is doing here. And then same thing along right here. There's like a little bit of like a 2 or a 3 on the value scale. And if you're not sure about this value scale I'm talking about, you can go back to one of our first classes, which was called, well, the Intro to Graphite and Drawing Forms. It talked about, you know, the contours and everything that we just sketched for this vase. But then the class after that, I guess it was the first class on value, tonal shading with and without a ground was the very first one. We've had numerous classes on values over the last couple of years that I've been teaching these classes though. And lots of classes have talked about this value scale from 0 to 10, but we're putting like a 2 or a 3 on the value scale here. So it's nice and light. I switched back to B pencil. I had the 8B. Now I've got the B pencil and I'm using the side of that pencil to do some nice soft tonal shading right there. And then I'll just go ahead and put the darker value on the ridge of the mouth opening there on the vase to make that more visible for you. Okay. And then over here on this side, same sort of thing. So we're just pressing down and putting more pressure in the areas where we see these darker value shapes happening, these shapes of shadows and shapes of light. And that's really how we're going to achieve this reflective surface of the vase, is through the amount of value that we're seeing there. We also want to hurry up and get some of these leaves that we're seeing through there, but how do we draw the leaves in a way that makes it look like we're seeing them through this cloudy glass? So we want to try to make our lines imitate the texture that we're seeing on those leaves. And so if it's cloudy, we want to make it like a little cloudy and a little blurry right here. So we're really just going for the overall shapes that we're seeing inside of there. There are, so rather than like just drawing a line for the stem, I'm looking at the shapes of light and dark that I'm seeing inside of there. So there's like this one really bright green stem. There's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stems in there that we're drawing. And one of them comes in front and like overlaps all the rest of them. This one comes down like an asparagus stalk. They all really feel like an asparagus stalk to me. So it comes down all the way down to the bottom. It starts out 5 up here at the top that we can see, but then there's 3 big stalks that are sticking out towards the bottom, and then they separate at the top into some smaller stalks that are growing off of them. But mainly it's these 3. And so you just want to pay attention to how they're overlapping each other and what's happening up here at the top, especially as they kind of twine together. And it's all based on that value scale from 0 to 10. So in the photograph where it gets to like an absolute 10 on the value scale, like absolute black, no paper showing through, is where I've made it nice and dark in my drawing. So that's going to be up here in the leaves and these dark shadows of the leaves. And obviously I didn't fully develop this drawing, so most of my focus was over here on this shadow when I worked on it to plan for the class. And then for the rest of the stalks, I'm getting more of like a really like a 7 or an 8 or a 6 on the value scale. And then a lot of the stalks, I did more of like a 5, like a mid-tone. But then I also tried to get some of like the texture and things that I was seeing on the stalks as I come down. All those little like imperfection moments, like this little bruisey moment on the stem right there. If I make that follow the cylindrical shape, you know, of the stalk here, like, you know, paying attention to how it's curved, just like the cylinder of our vase on the horizontal axis and the vertical axis. And you can draw those contour lines on there if it helps you, especially since we're just going to go over with our pencil and make that a little darker. I'll go ahead and start to darken some of that because this one gets pretty dark. This stalk does. And then we can go even darker for that little bruisey moment on it. But also we really want to keep our texture that we're adding, we want to keep it kind of cloudy, right? We don't want any like distinct lines happening because that's how we're going to differentiate what's inside of the vase versus what's outside of the vase. Although it is pretty clear right there in the middle, we can see pretty clearly through the glass right there. But we'll make it kind of cloudier up here. You really just have to trust the process. If you're paying attention to those value shapes in the way that you're adding your shading, then, you know, once you're done and you zoom out on the whole thing, then most likely you've achieved something that feels like how those stems look through the glass. But also we're kind of leaving this a little undeveloped too. So it's okay if it's not fully developed all the way through. All right, let's get some of that water in there. I just want to make sure I'm touching all the high points in this drawing. Okay, so here's where, let me go back to my little, oh, where'd it go? Where I just sketched out the contours for you. My goodness, was that behind? Where did I do that? Here it is. Okay, so this is like the front of the vase, right? But then we can also see through the vase. So the vase takes on this shape. So we've got perspective on this water. The water appears a little wider in front, and then it becomes more narrow because it's contained by the back side of this vase, which if I were to draw the contours of the back side, is going to look something like this. We're really getting into some like hardcore deep dimensional, three-dimensional space here, right? So we got to make our brain work in these 3 dimensions. So that would be the contours of the inside of the vase on the opposite side. Okay, so that's how the water is contained in that way. So we're trying to achieve this idea of this water. All we really need to do is lightly, so bear with me, it's going to be light. It's going to be a light line. But we're going to draw a light line that follows that sort of hexagonal shape here. Okay. And then we're trying to convince the viewer that they're looking at water, right? So water is all connected, it's one mass. So we need to get something here on the surface of the water, some of this like light that we're seeing reflected on the surface of the water. So we're going to shade in some of that value using the side of our soft pencil. I've got my 8B again. And I'm just trying to keep it nice and soft and fluid so that it feels like it's all connected there. And then, I mean, the photo goes way down to the bottom, but since, well, I guess I did go pretty far down in my other drawing. I think I put the water a little lower down than I should have, but I'm gonna go ahead and leave it there. The other way that I achieved that, how it's distorting the grout on the back of the wall right there. So by putting that grout that's distorted in this direction, I'll go ahead and just put it in a little lower down right here. But that distortion of that also is really going to drive home this optical illusion that we're going for with the vase. So there's a few key components here: the shape of the water, the shape of the value that we're putting inside of the vase, and then I don't want this going through the stalks. The stalks need to be overlapping it, the grout, the distorted grout line. Okay. And then we just need to get the rest of the vase to feel like it's all one thing as well. So there's this big line of value that comes down the side of the vase. So, and that's all following those contours that I outlined on the other page for an example for practice here. So I'm just trying to get the viewer to think they're looking at this vase that's all connected. So I want to connect it through its vertical and horizontal axis here like that. And I know I haven't drawn the rest of the water, but I want to get the vase to feel connected first, connected to the water. We've got a big highlight shape right here. Good to put that in there. And really you can put all these reflective light shapes in. There's some really interesting reflective light happening right here and right here. Honestly, you could even make up some reflective light. As long as it's following those contours, it's going to make sense to the viewer what they're looking at. Okay, and then all your value, as long as it's following those curves around the side of the vase, again, it's going to be convincing to the viewer that they're looking at a reflective surface here. Okay, let's see, what else do I need? had some like little wavy lines down here at the bottom to try to get you to think you're looking at like murky water, really just to make the water continue to feel connected. And I even could like scribble in there right there, but just, you know, continue to get it to feel like a little body of water down there at the bottom. And then I just left it really open at the bottom of the vase. Okay, and we can come back to all of that. It is, oh dear, I was like, as long as, I was thinking it was like 35 after, but it's already 42 after. All right. I'm glad we did the hydrangea class last week. I knew this was going to take up some time. But I said the emphasis was on the transition between the leaves and the vase, and that is definitely where we're spending most of our time here. So, all right, let's get to the leaves. And then even if we don't make it to the hydrangeas, we have the whole class last week for you to refer back to fill in the blanks on the hydrangeas. Okay, so now let's look for these big shapes of shadows in the leaves. And I'm going to go kind of quick here just for the sake of time. So if I go a little fast, you're going to have the recording available to you tomorrow on YouTube to go back and watch. Okay, so I'm just going to take the side of this 8B pencil and I want to get it super dark here in this negative space in between where that leaf that's coming forward and the part of the leaf that is in a recess that is far away from me. So really just getting in there. I told y'all I would get super dark at some point, and all these dark areas are bringing those light lines forward. Okay. So really just keeping it nice and smooth and continuous and tonal. And we want to get it really dark right there. And then we also have a very dark area here. I didn't make it quite as dark in my other drawing, but it's also, we're following the contours of these leaves. Like the leaves are curving up right here. So we want our value to kind of curve up as we're adding it. So I'm not just filling in the shading like straight across right here. I'm following the curve that I'm seeing on those leaves as well. And then this is like inside of the glass a little bit. This is the part that's overlapping on top of the glass. And then the rest of that was smushed down inside of the glass. So you want to make sure you've got that little separation happening there. Okay. And then I'll emphasize this little moment over here as well. But like I said, you can finish developing this entire drawing. I didn't even finish the other example, or I didn't fully develop my other example on purpose because I knew we would run out of time, but I'm giving you the tools to be able to fill in all the blanks. So there's a couple of stalks that like peek through over here. So I'm shading in between, but leaving some blank areas of those stalks, and then I'll just use a lighter value on those. So maybe switch back to the B or the 2B for those lighter values so that they stand out in contrast to that darker value. Okay. And then really it's just all about following the contours of the leaves. So just like I did the elevational mapping of the vase, I'm looking at, you know, how these leaves dip and curve, and that's how I'm adding my value. So it may seem like I'm just filling it in straight across, but I'm really paying attention to like how it curves a little bit. And there's like a little lip right here I wanted to put in where this one comes forward a little. So that really adds some 3-dimension when you notice like where they're curving onto each other. And then this one was really fun, how it does this, like, feels like a little flower itself, the way this leaf wraps around itself like a calla lily or something. So we can see the other side of it kind of does like a little scoopy thing. And then it comes up right there. But then this part is like, I didn't really draw it on the other one, but it's like a little cone shape. Like this. So I'm just emphasizing the contours there so you can see what I mean. And you could notice how the veins that are there, if you wanted to really get in there and draw the veins. The only one that I really drew the veins on this other example was right here. I really got in there and did this vein. So I'll go ahead and do that one since it was in my example. So it follows that little curve. And then I left some blank space there. And then I added this value in a way that follows the curve down the side of the leaf. And then on this opposite side, same thing. I'm following the curve on that leaf all the way down. And you could get in there and put more veins and do the same thing on those. Okay, now let's get some of these hydrangeas in here. I think wow, I'm really proud of myself how far I've gotten in this really short period of time. Okay, we did it, y'all. We're almost there. All right, so now we want this whole shape of the hydrangeas. So we talked about this last week. I got to move this a little bit. So, and I'm gonna turn my light back on. I feel like it's, well, maybe not. I don't know. It just looks so dim to me when I looked up at the Zoom. Okay, so we're looking for this like big bushy shape. Last week in the flower fundamentals class, we spent a lot of time talking about how to achieve, you know, this like big bundle. We talked about like a sphere or like a cinnamon roll type of situation. So that's what we're sketching, you know, but we're doing it like really loose implied lines here. And there's 3 of them. And we really got in there last week. If you missed it, it's up on YouTube. You can go check it out after this class. And I'm running off the side of the paper over here, but I'll just go ahead and go off into my spiral to get that last one on there. So it's like these big cotton candy fluff situations. But the way that we're going to make that come to life is by looking at, you know, all these little negative space shapes of shadow and light that stick out in our reference photo. So we spent a lot of time last week zooming way in here and looking at like these little hourglass shapes and these little crescent moon shapes that we're seeing. So it's a lot of little clamshells and crescent moons and triangles and all these little keyhole shapes in there. And, you know, the petals themselves are maybe like a paddle board or a, you know, butterfly or a clamshell, like I've said, those sorts of shapes. But we don't need to draw every single one. We really just need to hone in on like where those little keyhole spaces are happening in between them, like these little crescent moon shapes and triangles and hourglasses. I mean, you could even like just organically bounce around within this hydrangea bundle and sketch, you know, a variety of those shapes, and then get like some little half moon like shapes for the petals. And then just go in on top of those and give them just the side of your pencil to give like a little half shade of value on top of them. And if you want to really zoom in and get detailed on a couple of them, like let's do at least one right here. Let's do this one. So I've sketched in kind of like a little half shape right here. And then this is what I mean by a clamshell, how they kind of overlap each other, and where they overlap, the last one, the one on top, creates a shadow on top of the one beneath. And so, you know, we read that like maybe a little crescent moon from a distance, but if you get in there, that's what's happening. Okay, so that's how we're going to sketch those to get a little more you know, going on the hydrangeas. And then the last thing that I didn't put in that's in my other drawing is this big shadow along the back of the wall. So it's mainly just that. I mean, there it is on the other side as well, but I didn't, you know, I had to stop myself from going too far into this drawing more than an hour. But I'm just using the side of my pencil. I'm exaggerating that shadow a little bit just to make it a little more dramatic. And I'm just filling that in with a nice vertical directional line to make it feel like it's against something flat against the back of the wall. And you can go, you know, lighter than this. I exaggerated it and made it a little darker just to make it a little more dramatic. And so now we've really got an emphasis on this area and how all of these three different elements are interacting with each other: the back of the wall, the leaves, and the vase, and then also the flowers. And if you wanted to further emphasize like just the connection of the vase to itself, it's all about those vertical and horizontal lines. The vertical lines are going to curve with the side of the vase. The horizontal lines are going to go curved in that direction to wrap around the vase. Let me go back to this drawing for a second and just see if there's anything I didn't put in. I guess I didn't put in the little brick pattern on my backsplash in my kitchen, but that was pretty minimal. I think I just got behind the vase and just kind of sketched a brick pattern. So, and I did not make it perfect. And I don't think I even made it exactly like it looks in the photograph, but I've got some horizontal lines. And then I'm just alternating where I'm putting those vertical lines so that it feels like bricks. Okay, what else? Is there anything in this drawing or in this photograph that I didn't cover that you'd like me to talk about? We have a couple minutes. And then I'd love to see y'all's examples. I'm just gonna pop the chat open and see if there's anything, any burning questions that anybody has. I don't see any so far. Okay, well, I'd love to see y'all's drawings, and if a question pops up while we're looking at everybody else's drawings, we'll see if we have time at the end. But if you want to just spotlight your, or sorry, hold up your sketch and then Chanel can spotlight you. Oh, Marty, look at that. That's gorgeous. Yes, look at that. Very nice. Oh, I feel the water. I feel the form of the vase and the hydrangeas. Yeah, look at that. Thank you, Rhonda. Very nice. Oh yeah, and you got the grout down there at the bottom. Yeah, all those, any information that's showing you, you know, that distortion of the glass is so helpful to creating that optical illusion. And you even got a little farther with the hydrangeas. That looks great. And you got that little undulating curve of that leaf in front. Gorgeous work. Sarah, how's it going? Lovely. Look at that. That is beautiful. Yeah, you got that reflective surface and the water and you got the bricks in there you got so far. And yeah, those leaves really feel nice and three-dimensional. I love how soft your tonal shading is too. I think I said it last week or the week before. I can really feel how much practice you've been putting in. Oh yeah, I love how you got the like stalks overlapping each other. And I'm really feeling the three dimensions of that vase, especially at the bottom there. Those soft lines make such a difference. And I like the stylized quality to how you're adding the hydrangeas. Ooh, and speaking of stylized quality, look at the leaves on that one. I love that. They feel like they're breathing. I love that texture that you added there. always makes me so happy to see people inserting their own sort of style. And yeah, you got nailed every part of that vase. The grout, the water. It's really feeling three-dimensional. Love it. Thank you, Lance and Melissa. Sometimes I can't see y'all's names right away for some reason, but oh, let's see the other one. Yes. Wow. Really nice. Oh, did a question pop up, Chanel?
No, I was having trouble with the replace spotlight button for some reason, but I got it working again. It's good.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Carmen. Oh, yes. Yeah, those shapes are so convincing down there. I love how like some of y'all like really emphasize that roundness with that grout and the water. It really came across. I feel like I did my job because there's some gorgeous drawings right now. Yes, look at that one again. Y'all have really convinced me. I'm looking at a glass vase, which is no easy task. So really great work. Yes. Okay, I see somebody asked, could I show how to shade the leaves a little more? Let's see how much time we have. We have 2 minutes. I don't think I'm going to be able to get to that, but definitely, you know, if you look at any of those other flower fundamental classes, like maybe go back to the one on roses, it's just like we're doing shading the value of a petal of a rose. So you're just following those contours. It's a leaf instead of a rose. The same idea. We're just following the contours. Look at those stems though. The way those stems are overlapping each other, like it looks like I could just reach out and grab that stem. It's so convincing. I love it. Barbara, it's a little blurry. Hold it back a little. All right. Yeah. Boy, that grout. I'm glad I almost skipped over the grout, but the grout like drives it home. Just really describes that 3 dimensions down there at the bottom and the water as well. Okay, yeah, another great example. Yeah, that dark value does so much to just create that contrast and make it pop there. Right. I love how light you're being with your lines. It's a little hard to see it, but that doesn't bother me because that means you're keeping it nice and light till you're ready to go a little darker, Charlene. And I can see the roundness of the water at the bottom and those stalks overlapping each other.
We have a couple more.
Oh yeah, look how delicate those lines are, Teresa. And you got a lot farther with the hydrangeas as well. Let's see, this is Elizabeth. Oh wow, look how nice and that, like I really feel like that perfect shape of the vase with this one. And the transparency between the vase and the background.
And this is the last one.
I've got the chat open where it's blocking the one on the left. Yeah. Oh, did you do 2 of them, Grace? Or is there somebody drawing with you? Oh, okay. It's 2 of you. Nice. Yes, lovely. Really feeling that round shape of the water and the vase on both of those. Beautiful work, y'all. Thank you so much. What a great class. I was a little worried when we were halfway through and I was like still getting it together there and did a little side lesson, but we did it. We covered everything we meant to cover. And yeah, next week it'll be the intro to abstract forms, and that'll be a really laid back class since it's all, you know, open to interpretation with abstract forms, but I'll give you lots of fun compositional tips and tricks that will inform what we're doing the following week with those Sennelier acrylic paint pouches. So hope to see you all with that class next week, even if you can't make it to the premium one. That one next week is free. So, okay, thank you and have a great night.